Good afternoon and welcome back, everyone. Our next session, number 3, is Bill Cox, Understanding Intergenerational Communication. I'm going to read a quick bio and then hand it over to Bill. Bill is passionate about people, their value, and their potential. He is a sucker for a great cup of coffee and a hopeless Cleveland Browns fan. After 20 years of coaching and developing leaders in a vocational ministry setting as a pastor, an executive church leader, Bill set out to pursue a new calling of coaching leaders on a larger scale after becoming certified through the John Maxwell team as a speaker, trainer, and coach. As a son of a hardworking and successful business owner and seeing many of the challenges that his parents faced, Bill has a special place in his heart for business leaders. He has a passion to help them live deeply, fulfilling, and successful lives, both personally and professionally. Bill has had the privilege of working with hundreds of leaders from small businesses to large corporations, helping them get to the next level and live intentional lives of influence. On to Bill.
Okay. Thank you, Erica. Wow. I'm looking at how many people we have with us today. We're up to 298. That is awesome. I want to say good afternoon, everybody. So excited to be with all of you today. Welcome to all of our OACB associates, along with all of the families and individuals represented. I'm super excited. Are you guys ready to go today? Let me know you're ready to go. Let's just type in the chat. Give me a yes. Give me a I'm fired up. Give me a ready to go. Come on. Give me something here, everybody. Don't leave me hanging. I got my chat open. DY. I don't even know what DY means. See, this is all about communication today. I don't even know what DY stands for. Yes, let's go. Go Browns. We got a Browns fan on the line. Nice. Guys, this is awesome. Thanks, everybody. This is fantastic. Browns forever. Yes. We are going to have a great time today. Man, this is great. Thank you so much. Well, you heard a little bit about me. That's a picture of my two favorite people there in the bottom left-hand corner. My wife of 29 years, her name's Moe, and that stud son of mine to my left in the picture, Joel, just a phenomenal young man. Over on the right, you can see one of my main buddies in life. We have any dog fans here? Anybody have a dog? Maybe you have a dog with you right now during the webinar. That would be cool too. My buddy's name is Merrick. He is an 8-year-old German Shepherd. He loves to chase rocks and he loves to chase Frisbees. I never realized what pushovers German Shepherds actually are until I own one. And then, yeah, guys, you got to see that upper right-hand corner picture there. I am kind of a hopeless Browns fan, but come on. We're not hopeless this week, baby. We beat the #1 team in the league. Can I get a witness? This picture was taken right over at First Energy Stadium a few years ago when we beat the Ravens at home. It was my V for victory sign. That was it was one of those few times I left First Energy Stadium actually happy and not depressed. Browns fans, you know what I'm talking about. And finally, professionally, I'm a coach, everybody. What's that? Well, I love to help people discover their purpose and live fully into their purpose. That's what I'm about. We are created for a purpose. And when we discover it and we can fully live into it, friends, listen, life comes alive. I've worked with well over 3,000 leaders over the past few years and over the past 9 years. And you know what I've discovered is that one of the things that people lack clarity on is exactly that. Their purpose. What's your purpose? And let's drill it down to today. I want you to grab a sheet of paper, anything in front of you, and just write down, what do you want to have happen with the time that we have left in our call today? What's your purpose for the next 50 minutes or so? Make sure you get that purpose fulfilled over the time that we have remaining. I don't know what the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of webinar is. Sometimes the concept of stabbing my eyes with pickle forks comes to my mind. I don't know if that's too visual, too graphic for you guys, but sometimes when I think about webinars, I think about extremely boring. Maybe some of these images you can resonate with. That is not what this webinar is going to be today. We're going to have a good time together. We're going to talk about this whole topic of communication, right? It is the #1 skill that leaders need to master and get better at. Not just leaders, but humans. We're always communicating. The question is, are we connecting with other people? We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about some of the things that prevents human connection, specifically these generation gaps, right? They can create some real breakdowns in communication. So let's start by figuring out what generations we have represented on today's call. So here's what I want you to do. We're going to do this a little bit creatively. I want you to type in the chat, what was the first movie you ever watched? The first one you remember watching? What year was that movie released? And how old were you? Oh, now we're getting real. We're getting real now, everybody. Can you even remember E.T.? I have no idea. Little Mermaid? Lion King? Oh, Toy Story. That's a phenomenal. Jungle Book, Star Wars, Rescuers, E.T. again, Jurassic Park. Got a lot of young people on the call here today. 16 Candles, Fox and the Hound. All right. Mary Poppins. Jaws. Yes. Love this. Gremlins, Mary Poppins, Goonies. Somebody actually admitted to watching the Titanic for real. Oh man, Pocahontas, all right. Tommy Boy, Grease, Herbie the Love Bug, yes. I'm an old guy. I totally get into that. All right, nice. Well, I'm gonna give a lot of Jaws fans on here. All right, we got some old school going on here today. My first movie that I remember watching, how many of you guys ever watched The Apple Dumpling Gang? 1975, Don Knotts and Tim Conway. Are you ready for it? I was 9 years old. That puts me right at the big 5'6". So I'm an old guy, everybody. We got all kinds of different generations on the call today, which is awesome. I love that. Makes me super curious. I love it when people aren't the same age. You got somebody that's the same age as me. Yep. Thanks, Teresa. Power to the people. Power to us 56ers out there. We're going to do 3 things today, 3 takeaways with the time that we have left. Valerie, 72. I love it. Hi, Valerie. #1, you're going to learn how to value the uniqueness of each generation. So we're going to learn some things about what makes each generation, we're going to look at 5 generations today, distinct from one another. I think that gives us some insight. There are some things that happened in history, things that were going on in the world that when we were born into, that had a pretty powerful shaping influence on how we were as people. Secondly, we're going to understand what we as humans have in common. We have so much more in common as humans than we do the things that differentiate us, regardless of what generation you're from. And then finally, we're going to talk about 4 keys to connect with others. Everyone communicates, but few connect. Connection is where it's at, everybody. Connection forms the foundation of trust. And when you can connect with somebody, that's the gateway to true understanding between human beings. And so we want to talk about what those 4 key things are. We ready? All right, let's get to it. Takeaway #1, understanding each generation. So we got 5 generations we're looking at here. And you can see these listed right here. We've got the silent generation from 1925 to 1945. We've got the baby boom generation from 1946 to 64. Generation X, 1965 to 1980. The millennials following after that from 81 to 2000. And then the most recent, Gen Z. How many Gen Zers on the call? 2001 to 2020. And we're going to look at 3 different things about each generation, some of those defining experiences, the values that came out of that, and then how people tend to communicate based on those values. So here we go. The silent generation, born 1925 to 1945. What were some of the big things happening in the world at that time? Well, this was the World War II generation. This is the generation also known as the greatest generation. A generation that made incredible sacrifices, that faced a very real world existential threat in the Axis powers. They also faced economic headwinds and threats from the Great Depression. You can imagine those cultural realities deeply shaped the values of this generation. What were some of those values? Well, folks from this generation were people that valued sacrifice. They were very loyal, hardworking. I mean, think about it. Sense of duty, duty to country, duty to family. They had to pull together literally at every level of the culture in order to defeat those Axis powers, to win the war and to overcome incredible economic hardship. And so there was this deep value in the community over the individual. Very different from the most recent culture, right? Because of some of those things that happen. So when you think about how they prefer to communicate with others, they love the face-to-face stuff. They want to look you in the eye. And they want to speak face-to-face. Why is it? Well, because they love to get a sense of the person. They want to look you in the eye. They value the handshake, right? They want to know the character of a person. That's why that face-to-face communication is so important. For them, their word is their bond. They love the handshakes. And that's why they prefer phone calls, not text messages. Just having this conversation with a client the other day. She's like, she has a lot of clients who are, or not a lot, but some in that silent generation category. She's like, they always want to pick up the phone. She's like, phone calls drain me, but that's what they need. That's our silent generation. Now let's just ask this question. Is it okay? What do you think? We've got all kinds of different generations represented here. Everybody seems to have a cell phone these days. Is it okay to look at your phone when having a physical conversation? What do you think? No, we've got some maybes, mostly no's, some two's, never. We got yes, if you're comfortable, 4, of course. Yeah, check this out. So we can even see with the generations here represented with these answers, we've got some differences of opinion. Some people say, absolutely not. That's the worst thing you could do. Other people like, hey, there's no problem with that whatsoever. But if you think about communicating with someone from this generation, chances are for them, they're not going to appreciate that. They're going to kind of receive that as a sign of disrespect. Okay? That is the silent generation. Let me read this. I would say too, however, I think you need to consider with whom you're speaking with and why you're speaking. Okay. It's a great word, Lauren. Absolutely. Your audience matters. So important to know who we're talking to, right? Let's talk about our baby boomers. 1946 to 1964. This is the generation that came out of World War II. We had an explosion in population with all these people coming home from the war, having lots of babies. Those were a baby boomers, hence the term boom, a boom in population. Well, they grew up in an era with a lot of societal volatility, the Vietnam War, which is a very unpopular war. The civil rights movement, which changed the whole trajectory of our country with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the impact that he had on all of our culture towards civil rights. And how about technology? Now, I know some of you on the call, you've got a TV in every room, and you probably have, some of you have 80-inch big screens in some of your rooms. You have you have TVs on your phones. But this was the first generation that ever experienced the concept of a television. I mean, imagine that. It was the first time that people all across the country could watch programming all at the same time. Really changed culture and the way people understood what was happening in the culture. When we look at the baby boom generation and their values, you still have a lot of that hard work, growing up in America, and the concept of capitalism. For people coming out of World War II, there was just an explosion of economic opportunity and entrepreneurialism that came out of that people could literally kind of write and create their own future by simply working hard. A lot of political activity with many of the things that were happening in the world. And they very much had a respect for hierarchy. They had parents who were very authoritarian by the way that they led the homes. Very traditional values, strong personalities, people coming out of military experiences. And so they grew up with a very strong respect for hierarchy, for authority. And when you think about how they communicate, some of their preferences, again, they're much like the generation that preceded them. They prefer to talk by person or by phone. They were the first generation to kind of embrace email, and they like email as a preferred type of communication because they can use full sentences to explain themselves. They're not big into emojis. I know that's going to make a lot of you super sad. And the way that they consume information is not digital. It's more through newspapers, magazines. It's through print. That's our baby boom generation. How about Generation X, 1965 to 1980? What were some of the defining experiences that come out of Gen X? Well, I mean, for those of you who are Gen Xers, I'm on the front end of Generation X. We kind of grew up hearing a lot about the prospects and possibilities of nuclear war, literally doing drills of what we would do in the event of a nuclear war. It's kind of funny now looking back, realizing that none of those drills would make any difference whatsoever if that was going to happen, but we did it anyhow. There was a lot of tension between the USSR, now Russia, and the United States, communism versus capitalism. You remember President Ronald Reagan saying, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall." We saw the impact of that on the USSR and how it changed that country. And then the dawn of the personal computer. I remember the first time I bought a computer, I was in my 20s. It was unreal opening that Gateway 2000 computer. I thought, like Moses came down from the mountain with the tablets. It was unreal. First time culture was being exposed to technology like that. Yeah, gateway, power to the people. Just means we're old. So what were some of the values? Well, this generation tended to be much more independent, very resourceful. Because of the world we grew up in, our outlook tended to be more on the bleak side. And we came from parents and grandparents who seemed to, all they do was work. My dad worked for fun. He worked a full-time job, and then he came home at night and he was a full-time farmer, dairy farmer. All I knew growing up was work. We kind of reacted against that a little bit, and we said, hey, work is great, but let's add a little fun into this equation. Let's plan some vacations into this deal. And we were the first generation that really began to value the whole concept of work-life balance. How about those communication preferences? Had to go to computer lab in college because hardly anyone had a personal computer. Yeah, I mean, think about that. Some of you Gen Zers on the call, you can't even fathom that, but that was our world. Well, we both, we like text messages and email. We can go both directions. Don't mind making phone calls. When it comes to social media, most Gen Xers, their jam is Facebook. Also, a lot of podcasters out there in the Gen X world. Probably a lot. Any podcasters on the line here? Big Facebook people? Probably, I'm guessing. Do you remember? Oh, the rotary phones. Hey, not only do I remember rotary phones, but we had a community line. How many of you guys had a party line where us, my family, and like 6 other families on my road shared the same line? Like, you literally had to pick up the phone, and a lot of times your neighbor was having a conversation. And after a while, if you got really annoyed, you just sit there and listen to him because you want him to hang up. Like, come on, dude, I want to use the phone. I know some of you Gen Zers, you're thinking you're in a parallel universe right now, but that's how it was. Gen X. Well, here's a question for you. True or false? Gen Xers equally prefer phone calls and email communication. What do you think? You guys agree with that? You disagree with that? You think that's true or false? False, true, false, 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 true, false. All right. Well, here's the answer. It is true. Email and one-to-one phone calls are Gen X's preferred methods of messaging at preference rates of 50% for both. Take that. Here's something that's really important to keep in mind. Some of you are part of these generations and you're reading these characteristics. You're like, well, I don't think that. That's not like me. Well, that's exactly right. And that's why, while we want to understand the general differences between generations, we never want to pigeonhole people, because we're all unique and different based on any number of factors. Let's keep rolling. We got the millennials next. I heard, Lauren, what was the name? What did you call the millennial? Was it geriatric millennial?
Yes, geriatric millennial.
Oh my God. First time I heard the concept, the term of a geriatric millennial. What's that all about, Lauren? What does it mean to be a geriatric millennial?
So my understanding, this is a term that my mother found and finds incredibly hilarious. But my understanding is that there is kind of a gap within the millennial generation. The early millennials, I mean, also grew up without a lot, the personal computers and a lot of the technology.
Yeah.
I think we mentioned going to a computer lab, and that was my experience in college as well. So it seems like there is a very different experience for the early millennials versus the later millennials. And yes, my mother just loved the term geriatric millennial when she found it.
Well, you're getting a lot of A lot of agreeance in the chat there. You're not alone there, Lauren. It's totally a thing. They're telling me it's totally a thing, so you're good. Born 81 to 2000. This is really the age of technology and when things really started to take off. The whole concept of Google made our world become much more connected. Like the world was at your fingertips. A company's name actually became a verb. You want to figure out the answer to something? What do? You Google it. And it started to create much more of a global, flat world understanding with this generation. Deeply impacted the way that we see the world. So what are some of the defining values of millennials? Well, they have, now I don't know about our geriatric millennials here. I mean, some of you guys are going to have to do a whole webinar on what it means to be a geriatric millennial. I'm sure that's going to get a lot of resonance out there. But in general, an incredible ability to consume and process a lot of information quickly. They tend to be altruistic in nature. They want to know that they're part of a higher purpose in life. It's not just about making money. The generations that preceded them were very much success defined by the amount of money, the kind of salary we earn. But this generation started to shift away from that, there are things in life, which I think is a really great thing, that are much more important to a thriving and fulfilled life. Sometimes they can be perceived of as not having a good work ethic simply because they tend to learn how to work smarter than harder. And so there's a little bit of a misperception there. And this is a generation that started to move toward a much stronger emphasis on social responsibility and becoming much more inclusive. So when you think about communication preferences, because again, today is all about some of those communication breakdowns. This was the generation that started getting much more into texting and then started using certain social media platforms such as Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, the dawn of emojis. Can I get a witness? How many of you are big fans of emojis? Maybe you can throw in the chat, like, what are some of your favorite emojis? Nice. Some of you guys don't even know how to type letters. You're just all emojis. Oh, these are great. We got some Thanksgiving fans here. Yeah, the laugh cry emoji, that's one of my favorites. Party, yeah, great, sweet. And then this is the generation also that started to get into meetings on a virtual platform, right? We started to get introduced to newer forms of technology, virtual meeting rooms, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, different types of collaborative types of software like Trello, where we can do work collaboratively on an online platform. We start to see the proliferation of technology at a much greater level. Quick poll. The percentage of millennials prefer text messages over phone calls. Okay, come on. What do you think? We got 25, 50, 75, or 95? Yeah, a lot of fours here. Wow, that's awesome. Check this out. All right. A lot of threes and fours, almost exclusively threes and fours. What? 7 fours. Right, Allison. Well, here's the answer according to the polling. 75%. 75. Impressive. All right, let's move on. Our final generation, Gen Z, 2001 to 2020. My son was born. My son is a Gen Zer born in 2002. Now think about this generation. This was the generation that was born after September 11th. How many of you, I'll bet a lot of you on the call, remember exactly what you were doing when those planes flew into the World Trade Center buildings, the towers? Remember what you were doing? Let me know, what were you doing that day? Yeah, it did. It did change the world. Absolutely. At work, in college, pregnant. Yeah. Walking into college. Yeah. You're in class. Incredible. I mean, you folks remember, like, the world stopped. I was at a gym on a life cycle. I was in front of this huge big screen TV. And back in the day, those big screen TVs were like the size of a small car. And I remember I couldn't hear what was going on. All I could see was the image on the television. And it looked like, like, that looks like the World Trade Center. It looks like it's like on fire. And literally, while I was watching, I watched the second plane fly into the second tower. It's incredible. Changed our lives. You know, we went from being a culture that felt safe and protected and surrounded by bodies of water to feeling very scared, very vulnerable. Yeah, I mean, I'm reading everything you guys are putting in the chat. I mean, incredibly powerful day. And here's a generation that was born after that. It was a generation that was born into the whole concept of the global war on terror. That there's a whole new kind of warfare, guerrilla warfare, terrorism that affected the entire globe. At the same time, we saw an explosion in technology as it continued to increase exponentially. This is the digital native generation. My son grew up with an iPad. iPad wasn't even a word when I was a kid. And video content became king. The primary way by which Gen Z learns is through video, right? My son is a huge YouTuber. He wants to learn something, man, he's going straight to a video on YouTube. So think about how that might affect values. Well, this is a generation that, you know, values individualism, self-expression, big time. The age of the selfie, right? How many people have got hurt and fallen off cliffs and even died taking selfies, right? Self-expression, authenticity. They have a great, very big and powerful BS meter. They are big into social responsibility, diversity, inclusion. These are big things for, generally speaking, Gen Z. When you think about their communication preferences, they are big time texters. And when you think about all the different social media apps and platforms, I mean, for these guys, Facebook is like, you know, a dinosaur. That's old school. Well, if you think, all of you on the call who think Facebook is new technology and cutting edge stuff, like, you're a dinosaur to Gen Z. They're into TikTok, big time. TikTok has taken the world by storm. Very short, quick, rapid fire videos for people to consume. Instagram, Snapchat, they big into DMs. They love GIFs, right? And also big on emojis. Any GIF fans in here today that love to send those? My son gets into these. I miss MySpace. Melanie, you're old. I'm just saying. So we've got A lot of differences, right? A lot of differences. Let's speaking of our Gen Z friends here, how many of you know what these words stand for? How many know what bussin' or no cap or fire or goat stands for? Any guesses? Just goats. Yeah, greatest of all time. Not bad. Yeah, good. Fire's great. You guys got this. Bussin' is extremely good. I just found this out last week from a buddy of mine. His boys came home talking all this vernacular. He's like, what are you guys talking about? It's like, yeah, Dad, bussin', it's good. No cap means no lie, for real. Fire, you guys guessed it. Amazing, cool, and GOAT, greatest of all time. Tom Brady, GOAT. Michael Jordan, right? Yeah. No, really, it's Bernie Kosar, right? Okay. So we've got a lot of differences, right? A lot of things that set us apart. And beyond that, there's it's more than that. You add to that the differences of the families that we grew up in, right? Our families, we can't live with them and we can't live without them. And they deeply impact our lives. Psychologists tell us that by the time, from the time at which you're conceived till about, you're 9, your primary brain wavelength is what's called theta. It's that wavelength when you often see kids at play and imagining themselves, playing house and playing office and all those things. I remember as a kid, I used to have this little tiny, like this very extensive matchbox village that I would set up and build all these houses and create roads and just imagine myself creating my own life as a kid. Well, that primary brainwave link called theta is really that period in life where we're just downloading software, downloading the operating system for our lives. Family of origin environment is so powerful. It's where we learn many of our values, many of our beliefs, what we believe about God, what we believe about people, what we believe about authority, about money, about ourselves. All these stories that we're born into, stories that we experience, stories that ultimately define us. Everybody on this call, we could all tell a story about how powerful and influential our families have been in shaping the people that we are, for sure. Nathaniel Brandon says, no factor is more important in people's psychological development and motivation than the valued judgments they make about themselves. Every aspect of their lives is impacted by the way they see themselves. Oh my gosh, I can tell you, friends, as a coach, I coach around this issue more than any other singular issue in coaching. People's belief systems, people's maps, people's operating system, the narrative, the tape that's running inside our head, the things that we believe about ourselves, the things that we tell ourselves on a daily basis, writes our story for life. And that creates a unique story for each of us. Beyond that, we have cultural differences. We have demographic differences. Some of us grew up on, different sides of the train tracks. We have different vernacular that we use, all these things. I mean, just check this out. What decade did these phrases originate? How about the concept of dis? What decade did that come out of? The 50s? Gen X? 70s? All right, we're going to go through this pretty quick. Dis is the 90s. Good job, Kim. You got it. To show disrespect. Then we have this one. How about hipster? You know what hipster came out of? Got some 60s, 70s, 60. Here we go. 1950s. It was a trendy person. Yeah, Eileen had it right. How about the bee's knees? Well, that's going to go back in time a little while. Some of you have never even heard of the bee's knees. 40s, 60s, 50s. All right, here we go. Bee's knees. Guys, the 1920s. You didn't go back far enough. Yeah, that's right. Phoebe, you got it. Means outstanding. Bee's knees. I think we should bring that back. What do you think? Fleek. I never heard of this until this past week. The 90s, 2000, 2010, current. All right. When did it originate? Here we go. 2010s. Good job. Melissa Miller, good job. 2010. Stylish. And gag me with a spoon. What about that one? Oh, yeah. A lot of 80s. A lot of 80s, baby. Let's see what we say. 80s it is. Yeah, come on. You guys, the 80s was like the best time ever in the history of this country. The Browns were going to the playoffs repeatedly, year after year. Bernie Kosar owned Cleveland. I mean, it really was. It was a beautiful time. Probably hasn't figured out that I'm a really strong Browns fan, have you? Yeah. So these differences can create breakdowns and communication. And this actually can be pretty expensive for companies, right? I mean, check this out. Research tells us the total cost of employee misunderstanding. What do you think? 370,000, 37 million, 370 million, or 37 billion? 3, 4, that's a lot. You're right. It is a whole lot. Well, here it is. Check this out. Number 4 is the correct answer. 37 billion with a B dollars. Study from the Holmes Report. Total cost of employee misunderstanding rose to $37 billion, with an average cost per company of $62.4 million for companies that have more than 100,000 employees. Gets expensive. Well, listen, we only have 7 minutes left before we're going to get into some questions. So let me just run through some things really, really fast. I want us to understand, everybody, that we have a whole lot more in common than we don't. And sometimes the differences between us generationally can create fear and keep us from leaning in to connect with and get to know people who aren't from our generation. As humans, we tend to fear what we don't understand. But the reality is, here's what I want you to understand. We have so much more in common than we don't as human beings. You know, I'm also a pastor. Was a pastor for 20 years before I went into business for myself, and have returned to that on the side for the past 3 years. And I have people in my church, you know, Russell Boyd, he's 90 years old and still playing golf. And I do children's sermons for kids who are, you know, 3 to 5 years old. And I love every generation and every generation in between. I love people, and I love the things that make people, the things that we have in common as humans. John Maxwell, in his book, The Leader's Greatest Return, you know, talks about the motivations of people. Look at this. Here's what we all desire as human beings. We're created for a purpose. We're created for autonomy. We want freedom from control. We're created for relationships, guys. We want to connect. We're created. We're social animals. We're created for progress. We want to experience personal and professional growth. That's one of the things that makes OACB so great. You value development. You invest in your people. That's why this is such a great organization. You're connecting to something that makes us human and that causes us to thrive as humans. We want mastery. We want to be able to excel in our skills. We want money. We want to be financially secure. Go ahead and type in the chat what you want to be paid this next year. No, I'm just kidding. But we want to be successful financially, right? And we want recognition. We want to know that when we do a good job, we want people to appreciate the things that we do. We know as human beings that we're chemically wired the same way. These are the happy chemicals, and they get released into our system when we do certain things, which tells us that we're created to experience certain things in life. And when we do, we have chemicals that dump into our brains that give us a sense of well-being and happiness. Endorphins, which help us fight through and do hard things. Dopamine, which keeps us on track as we're accomplishing those hard things. So we have individual chemicals. We need to do things individually in organizations that allow us to get a sense that, hey, I'm doing something to contribute to the whole. And we have communal chemicals, serotonin and oxytocin. These are chemicals that are released between people when we feel a sense of shared respect. Oxytocin is that love chemical when we feel like we belong, when we feel like we're safe in a circle. It tells us that we all have these chemicals flowing through us, and we were all created to experience these same kinds of things in life. So let's talk real quick. I'm going to take about 7 minutes, and I'm going to walk you through 4 keys to how we can connect with others, with those things that we have in common. Ready to go? Here we go. Number 1, love and accept yourself. Now, this may seem a little counterintuitive. Like, Bill, I thought this is about connecting to others. Why are you talking about loving and accepting yourself? Well, this is foundational, everybody. Because if you are not okay with yourself, if you're not comfortable in your own skin, here's what I know. You're going to have a very difficult time connecting with others. You want to know why that is? It is that way because if you are not okay with you, all of your energy is going to focus inward. It's going to be internal. And you won't have the kind of energy you need to focus on and care about and connect to other people. So it's really important that you're okay with you, that you get to a place in life where when you get up in the morning and you look in the mirror, you like what you see. That doesn't mean that you don't have room to grow and there aren't things that you want to change. That's called being human. But at a core level, you know what? I like me. I may have been through a lot of different experiences in my life, and some of them have been really difficult. I've had to overcome some really challenging setbacks, but it's what makes me, it's what defines my story. And I like who I see. I like what I look at when I'm looking in the mirror. When you have that, it allows you to be free to love others, free to focus on others, free to serve other people. So if you're going to connect with others, regardless of what generation, you got to start with you. And some of us may have a little bit of work to do there, some growth to do. The very thing that might be preventing you from connecting to others, creating communication breakdowns, has nothing to do with the age difference, but with your own self-perception. Okay? Love and accept yourself. Secondly, put energy into being likable. Now, let's just be honest. For some of us, it just takes a little more work than others, okay? How many of you can relate to this picture, all right? How many of us grew up watching these characters, Winnie the Pooh? This is such a phenomenal study of human personality. I mean, you look at these characters and all of us probably can find a character in the boat that we can relate to. There's just Winnie. He's this happy-go-lucky, not a care in the world kind of a guy. All he cares about is finding the next honeypot. And we've got Eeyore, and the sky is just constantly falling. There's this rain cloud always over top of Eeyore. The glass is always half empty. We've got the obsessive compulsive neurotic little piglet. We've got the over-controlling rabbit. And then there is this guy who changes the energy when he comes onto the scene, right? What's his name? Who's that guy over there on the right-hand side, right? His name's Tigger. T-I-double-G-R, right? When Tigger comes on the scene, he changes the calculus because he brings an energy into. Nothing is impossible for Tigger because that's what Tiggers do best. And Tigger has this song, right, that everybody remembers. Well, the wonderful thing about Tiggers are wonderful things. Their tops are made out of rubber. Their bottoms are made out of springs. They're bouncy, trouncy, pouncy, founcy, fun, 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 fun. But the wonderful thing about Tiggers is I'm the only one. I'm the only one. I'll be here all day, everybody. But Tigger changes things, right? Because Tigger brings an energy. And friends, you may not be called to be Tigger, but trust me, you can bring energy. How do you bring energy? How can you be more likable? Well, first of all, slow down. Some of you just need to create a little more margin in your life. You got so much going on. You have so many tasks on your task list that you're trying to get done. You don't even see people, let alone connect to them. They're right in front of you, but no, you're too busy. You got to slow down to connect to people. How about making eye contact? For some of us, that's really hard. That gets back into that insecurity, self-esteem kind of a thing, right? Eyes are windows into the soul. Eyes tell us so much about people. Making eye contact is powerful. It's a powerful way of connecting with others. And how about smiling? Smiles change everything because they release endorphins, they release serotonin, they make us feel happy. And they also spread happiness to other people. You'd be surprised what can happen when you make eye contact and simply smile at people. It's a rare thing these days. It's so easy to do, and it's so powerful. I'd love to tell you a story about my friend Carrie. She's over there on the second row, right-hand side with the blonde hair. Carrie came into one of my classes really with a bad attitude. They'd gone through some changes in her department, and she wasn't happy when she came into my class. And throughout the course of this personal development class she was in, she realized that she needed to change that. It was even affecting her ability to show up the right way on phone calls because she was in customer service. And she did one thing. She put a phone on her desk with a mirror. Or excuse me, she put a mirror on her desk, and she would look at herself every time she was on a customer service call. And she would force herself to smile while she was talking on the phone to people. And do you know that simply by smiling, it changed Carrie's attitude? That she started getting feedback on her customer service calls, that she was showing up totally different as a person. She was felt differently by the people that she served simply because she put a smile on her face. These simple techniques can help you become so much more likable. Check your posture. Do you have an open posture toward people? Do you have openness? And put your focus on other people. Everyone has an invisible sign hanging from their neck all the time saying, just make me feel important. See me. Add value to others. Third, how do we do that? Well, we add value to others when we truly value people. This is a really simple level setting question. Do you love people? Not a trick question. Does every person you pass by, do you realize this is a person who has intrinsic worth and value? They deeply matter. This person matters. Do you value people? Secondly, and this is one of my core values that I carry with me throughout life, I just try to live with this awareness, treat everyone as though their heart is breaking, because it probably is. As humans, we do such a great job of acting like we have life together and everything's fine. But all of us know on this call, so many of us, like we're just on the verge of breaking down. We're coming from something really difficult. We're trying to handle the stresses of everyday life. And don't believe what you see. Lean in at a deeper level. Pay attention at a deeper level what's going on in people's lives. Know and relate to what other people value. Start to figure out the keys to people's lives. One of the things I loved about Kevin Stefanski when he took over the Browns during the COVID year, I don't know if you guys ever read about this, one of the first things he did on a Zoom platform was have all of the team and coaches gather on Zoom and share their 4 H's. What are the 4 H's? He wanted everybody to share their history, their story, some of their hurts, their heroes in life, and their hopes. I believe it brought that team together. That was the first time Cleveland had made the playoffs in I don't know how many years. And Stefanski understood before football, we're human beings. And we need to come together and connect at a human level. When you understand these things, when you start being curious about these things in people's lives, it changes everything. When you care about those things in people, when you ask about those things, when you pay attention to those things, it will change everything. Mark Golston says, when you make someone feel valuable, you're telling the person you have a reason for being here. You have a reason for getting out of bed every morning and doing everything you do. You have a reason for being a part of this family, this company, this world. It makes a difference that you're here. You start living like this, everybody, and it will change your life. You will become a person of influence. You will easily connect to other people, regardless of their generation. And then finally, listen. Now, we don't have time to go through all of this, but you need to really start leaning into other people, listening to understand. I want to just fast forward real quick and touch on what this really looks like. We're talking about empathic listening. That you listen in such a way that you're paying attention to people's emotional feelings, that you're leaning into those feelings, that you're giving a voice to those feelings, and that in the process, people feel understood. And I know we're getting right down to the end, but here's a real quick slide to share with you. How do you do that? How do you listen to understand? Well, start asking more open-ended questions. Questions that end with how, when, where, who. Use pauses, create space. Use minimal encouragers. Say things like, yeah. Shake your head like you're in rapport with the person. Mirror by repeating the last couple of words, using their words. Label a person's feelings. Paraphrase back to them what you hear them saying, and summarize what you hear people share when they talk. And when you do these things, you'll give people a sense that you really feel them, that you really hear them, and that you really understand them. And when you do that, you create true human trust and connection. Now, we're out of time, so I have to hand it back over to Erica. But that basically is what I had for you today, folks. Erica?
Thank you so much, Bill. That was a wonderful and encouraging session. We really didn't have any questions in the chat, just really good positive reports about the session. So thank you so much. We are going to take a 15-minute break, and then I hope to see you all in 15 minutes for our last session, Tech Intentional Practices. Thank you all.
Everybody.